welcome you all to this expert hearing on the profound and complex topic of science of thought. This hearing aims to understand thought from diverse perspectives, from a philosophical, from a neuroscientific, and of course experiential part. Our objective today is to deepen our understanding of what thought really is, to help us as the members of parliament to make better decisions about using thoughts for a more humane world. And we are pleased to have the following distinguished experts with us. Dr. Anoop Kumar will offer a viewpoint on thought and consciousness from his unique background as an emergency physician in the US, who also has had profound personal experiences in the spiritual realm. Dr. Bindu Kutty, a professor of neurophysiology at the National Institute for Mental Health and Neurosciences in India. She is an internationally distinguished neuroscientist who specializes in the effects of meditation on the brain and will provide insights into the biological underpinnings of the mechanism of thoughts. Dr. Kimberly Davis, another physician from the US, an osteopath and clinical researcher, joins us to share her insights from decades of practice with patients who experience the healing power of thought. And we have our own Minister of Science and Technology, Dr. Christophe Dumas, who is a nuclear physicist and head of the GEP Research Center, focusing on Swami Isha's I theory, who will share ideas about the qualities of thought and the differences between human and non-human intelligence. Our first expert is Dr. Anoop Kumar. As Dr. Kumar was actually scheduled to be in the emergency room in his hospital at this time, we recorded the testimony earlier and will play it for you now.
What is thought? Is a question we have. If we want to describe anything, if we want to communicate something in words, then that is always depending on a model. So what is the model that we are using to describe thought? This is why the parliament is so important. I would present that the different things that people are going to be saying in this parliament are going to be because our models are different. So if you take the biomedical model, let's take the biomedical model. The biomedical model is based on a philosophy, and that philosophy is usually unexamined and undeclared. And that philosophy is that physical stuff is primary. Now, what does the word physical mean? If you look in the dictionary, I looked at it once because I was curious what the strange word meant. And the dictionary said pertaining to the body is physical. But of course, in the dream, you have a body. So in the dream, it's physical, but then you wake up, the 100% physical body has become 100% mental. So now I still want to know what the word physical means. I'm just saying this because many times we gloss over words as if they hold meaning, but many times they're restricting our vision rather than yielding insight. But let's take that as it may be, and let's say the physical stuff is primary, the physical body is primary. Now, what is thought? If the physical body is primary, then of course thought has to come from the physical body. And the understanding, of course, is that the nerve center of the body is the brain, right? The governing center of the body in the biomedical model, at least as far as thought goes, is the brain. And so we can say, we can divide the brain into different regions. For example, there's the prefrontal cortex, and the prefrontal cortex is in charge of executive decision-making and thinking, we can say. Though speech is not primarily from there, speech is from the left side of the brain, but still, this arising of thought, we can say, this kind of executive type of thinking happens in the prefrontal cortex. Now, these are all old theories. It's important to understand. None of this is modern. Okay, these are because now we understand that the whole brain kind of works together. There's kind of a global space, a global cohesion for the brain. And we divide it to understand it, just like we have divided the human being into parts to understand it. We have divided the experience of the world into spiritual and physical and mental and so on, as if these things exist. But we have divided it for our biases and our understanding, not because it is actually the nature of the world. And so similarly, we've divided the brain into different areas. And we have, in one area, you have the default mode network. Generally, if you divide it into different cortices, you have the prefrontal cortex. And we can say thought arises from that. But there's a fundamental problem there because the brain is supposedly a physical thing. And yet thought is a mental thing. And so how can you connect the two? It's like oil and water. Can I say the oil comes from the water? How does it come from the water? They repel each other. They're of different natures, we can say. So this is where we have to look a little bit more deeply to see if the brain is really the origin of thought. Now, there are many arguments also for the brain being the origin, not only of thought, but of subjectivity, of mentality, of mental experience, of phenomenology, right? There are reasons to believe that. So if a neurosurgeon touches a certain area of a person's brain, they will start to smell things. I smell flowers. Another area I remember back when this happened, when I met this person that I loved so much, I remember. They touch another area, I feel pain. So there's definitely a correlation between the so-called physical and the so-called mental. But the question is correlation causation? Right? A fundamental question for all scientists, but a fundamental question for all of us who are interested in the nature of the world. Is correlation causation? Or is the correlation merely bringing two kinds together, as we do with Namaste? As we bring self and other together, as we bring left brain and right brain together, as we bring Shiva and Shakti together, right? As we bring the masculine and the feminine together. Replicated in the neurological system, by the way, at what's called the pyramidal decussation, when the information comes down and crosses at the brainstem, comes together right in this point. So correlation versus causation, and if it is correlation, what does that suggest about this duality that we're experiencing of the physical and the mental, of mentality arising from the brain? I would suggest to you that to understand all of these things, including, I'm sure, a view that's going to be presented today, that thought originates in the sea of infinite consciousness, that what we call a thought is nothing but a quantum of the infinite field of consciousness. If a person wants to understand that, we need a different model. We need a model that encompasses all models, and that model has to be rooted in identity. Identity is the name of the game. Identity is the name of all games. Identity is the key to unlock all of the secrets of thoughts, of quantum theory, of everything. Let me touch on a few different kinds of identity in this exploration of thought. What we talked about, why we have the physicalist model of thought that I just talked about in terms of the brain. The reason we have that is one reason only, and that is because we identify as a physical thing. That is the core reason. If we did not perceive ourselves as physical things, how could we come up with that theory? It's impossible. So the question then is, how do we perceive ourselves like this? Why do we perceive ourselves like this? Regardless of if it's right or wrong is not the question. It's simply understanding the mechanism that's unfolding. When the sense of identity is localized, this in spirituality is often called ego. When the sense of identity is localized, then what we have is a local experience of reality. And therefore, you have this subject-object split. You have to have the subject-object split as long as locality is identified in the local domain, right? Why? Because if I say I am here, I'll point to a spot, I am here, then naturally I'm not there. I have to create a split here and there. No, I'm here in the US, you are in India, you are in France, you are in Antarctica, you are on Pluto, you're in the Pacific Ocean. It doesn't matter. As soon as I say I am here and I've localized it, I have superimposed there. That where identity is not existing is what we call there. Whatever we call here means where identity occurs. And as soon as I have localized the sense of identity and I say I am here in this localized area, I have created a there. And now I have created this difference. And this fundamental split is the split of space and time. How do we create space? Space is nothing but the distance between here and there. It is the origin of all space. It's the origin of all time is here and there, and noticing the interval between the points of here and there. When it's a sequential interval, we call it time. When it's a simultaneous interval, we call it space. That's why space and time are always connected in physics. That doesn't happen at the level of thought. It happens at the level of identity. That's why we can think this doesn't sound right, because it doesn't gel with the sense of identity, which is split. If the sense of identity is split, then space and time become fundamental, that here and there become fundamental, and it cannot be reconciled at the level of thought. But if the sense of identity is integrated, the here and the there are integrated in a non-local identity, then the origin of thought becomes a difference. Thought becomes a quantum of the integrated identity, which is the non-local field of consciousness. This is another level of identity. One is not right, one is not wrong. They are different based on the polarity or integrated nature of identity. So in physics, when we speak of the quantum in physics and quantum physics, what is often not recognized is that quantum physics was born because Max Planck had to solve a problem. He had a problem in solving energy and how it applied into a particular equation, how he could solve the problem with energy. The only way he could make it work is if he hypothesized that energy came in quantum, in packets. Now, the word quantum existed centuries before quantum physics adopted it, before physics adopted it to create quantum physics, and all the subsequent scientists who developed it. The word quantum existed several centuries before quantum physics was born, which means that the nature of the quantum is ancient, of course. Physics takes a particular mathematical lens based on certain presuppositions. It describes quantum physics. But the problem is now we look at quantum physics as though it knows what the quantum is. But it knows a version of the quantum. It knows an experimental mathematical representation of the quantum. But the nature of the quantum is with the human being. The original quantum is that quantized aspect of infinite consciousness that we call the individual identity. That is the original quantum. And when the sense of identity is quantized as individuality, that being, that infinite intelligence reflects a quantized world. And therefore, when you look around, what do you see? As a quantized being, you see quantums. What is a quantum? It's a unit. What is a unit? It is anything that is circumscribed with a boundary. Look around. Everything that is seen with the eyes will be circumscribed with a boundary. The screen you are looking at, my head, my eyes, everything that you can see with the eyes is quantized. And even quantum physics is approaching this in that we used to think this was for very small things. But with time, we're realizing, oh no, actually this quantization, this quantizing happens even at bigger and bigger and bigger. The experiments are continuing at bigger and bigger levels. Ultimately, we'll realize that there's no difference between the so-called quantum world, which is thought to be small, and this macro world. When will we realize that? When our own quantized identity starts to wake up. When our own sense of identity starts to shift, then we realize that we have never been looking at the world through the eyes. It has always been the mind that sees. And it is a mind that crystallizes as the process of seeing, which looks like what we call eyes and the optic nerve and the optic chiasm and the occipital cortex and so on. This is why we don't know why perception happens. Apparently, something happens from the outside. The light goes in, goes to the optic chiasm, goes to the optic nerve, occipital cortex. Then the brain does something. We don't know what it is. The brain does something and then casts the image, apparently, right? This is the idea. But why don't we know? Because there's a fundamental blind spot there. Because everything we see happens in time. So if something is reflecting, light is reflecting off of an object out there, we cannot presuppose the object because that object is only known post-interpretation of the occipital cortex. So what is it that the ambient light is reflecting from? I cannot say it's reflecting from a wall. I can't say it's reflecting from a screen. I can't say it's reflecting from a rock because we only know the rock after interpretation. So we don't know that light is bouncing from the rock. We don't know what the light is that is being interpreted as the rock. So where thought originates depends on the state of identity. Localized state, localized being creates a dichotomy, which is reflected across all dichotomies, including mental and physical, spiritual and scientific, you and me, here and there, now and then, and of course, physical and mental, which is where the brain-mind divide comes in. It's a superimposition of our identity. At a different level of identity, at the known local level of identity, thought is simply a quantized aspect of infinite awareness. And at an even more integrated identity, there's no such thing as thought. So even before we ask the question of what is thought, we have to ask, who am I? And does thought exist?
So even though Dr. Kumar might be in his emergency room, I'd like to thank him, and I'm sure that he will send our heartfelt thoughts of gratitude for him. Let us now proceed to our second expert, Dr. Bindu Kutty, a neuroscientist. And Dr. Kutty, yeah, the floor is yours, please.
So I will be giving my thought perspective on this subject from the perspective of neuroscience. Human brain is most highly evolved organ in nature with more than 100 billion neurons and 100 trillion connections that outnumber the stars in the Milky Way galaxy. And the marvelous cognitive capabilities of human brain is actually the outcome of the large-scale intrinsic functional organization of the brain networks. And this dynamic and flexible networks has the access to all cognitive resources of the brain, and that helps in reorganization of the cognitive maps, and that is very essential for the adaptive and flexible behaviors. And thought also is a mental activity, and that is an outcome of this kind of brain network organization. And where thought arises, studies have shown that this arises in the triple network model. And triple network model consists of central executive network, salience network, default mode network. And central executive network is very important for controlling cognitive behaviors, whereas the default mode network is very important for spontaneous thought generation and mind wandering, activation of self-monitoring processes, etc. And salience network control these two according to the demand, according to the situation. Suppose if we are involved in cognitive processes, definitely salience network activate the central executive network. Whereas when we are indulging in self-reflective mental processes, it activates the default mode network. Salience network helps to extract the salience of the stimuli from the environment. And also DMN, if you look at DMN is active during rest state, quiet awake, and sleeping, and completely silent during cognitive performance. So you can see an anti-correlation between the central executive network and the default mode network. So the quality of the thought depends upon how efficiently this network operates. If there is a dynamic and flexible network operation, definitely there is an improvement of thought as well as that leads to well-being. Whereas like you can see that the content of thought and that is linked to our well-being. So here now the content of thought, how does this network takes care? And you know that negatively based thoughts as well as negative content of dreams lead to a poor quality of life, and that leads to even mental health disorders like such as depression and anxiety disorders. We have also looked at this using a survey study during COVID, and we have seen that there is a relationship between poor sleep quality, negative dream content, and that affect the daytime functioning. And so how thought causes suffering? So this is one fundamental question we neuroscientists ask. And it is thought stickiness that is the root cause of mental health issues. So thought stickiness means like thought identification. Thought identification in the form of experiential fusion and cognitive reification. It reduces all our mental capacity. That's because when we are absorbed in our thought processes, definitely there is diminished awareness, absence of meta-awareness, and increased mind wandering. This totally reduces the mental capacity and psychological processing, leading to suffering, negative thoughts, anxiety, and fear. And also this in cognitive reification, we think that our perception and thoughts are accurate depiction of our self or reality of life and not as mental processes. So, and also we were not taught how to use our thought to create well-being for ourselves. This is one folly from the cultural consequences. And there are studies also to support this, that when people are challenged with thought, they even prefer to be electrically shocked, even to get the pain sensations rather than sitting alone and thinking. So how this thought leads to suffering? You can see that this thought leads to suffering. There is that the entire dynamics of this triple network is affected. You can see that there is enhanced connectivity within the structures of the DMN network. Like some of the areas, there is highly connected network, and this leads to excessive concentration of thought to oneself, excessive self-referential information processing, fear and anxiety generation. So high DMN activity is not good. And also there is a weak connection between the central executive network and default mode network that bring a low cognitive flexibility and efficacy. So you cannot have, the real cognitive flexibility to reach out to the cognitive sources. And also there is increased salience network. Increases salience network connectivity also increase the dynamics between the DMN and SN and increase sensitivity to stimuli. We perceive neutral stimuli also as a potential threat. And there is the excessive stress reactions in non-threatening situation. You become very hyper vigilant. And also the negative emotional experiences, especially during decision making. So you see that how these thoughts, the disruption of the network dynamics disrupt the engagement with thought and poor cognition, leading to poor cognition. So this is from I will be talking in this part, only this part, that so the thought, the suffering comes when there is more object orientation as well as when there is a reification, cognitive reification. So, and the thing is that we are not using the situations, like to enhance our meta-awareness as well as to reduce the object orientation and to enhance the deifications. So why thought causing immense problem is mainly because of the thought identification, causing that is experiential fusion and cognitive reification definitely leads to suffering. So now the question is how to use thought as a tool towards well-being. That is how to go about objective diffusion instead of experiential fusion, how experiential diffusion and how cognitive reification enhance the well-being. And this, it has been shown that the cognitive reification as well as non-duality and equanimity of the mind offer a pathway to achieve deeper sense of peace and stability. So we have, in this regard, we have carried out a lot of studies and even other studies, neuroscientific studies have shown that meditation practices enhance various network organizations, and thus it enhances attention control, emotion regulation, and awareness. When there is enhanced awareness, definitely it enhances the cultivation of meta-awareness. Definitely there is a reduced mind wandering and reduced DMN activities, reduced these mind wandering thought processes, and that leads to enhanced well-being. And this is mainly because of the efficient networking. You can see that, so when you are in the process of cognitive processes, you can see the areas executive network is highly active, that leads to a sustained activation and sustained attention. And even if the mind, what you say that there is a thought distraction happens due to the activation of DMN, you can see that this salience network enhances, detects this distraction of awareness, and thus helps in reorientation of awareness. So these are all possible only because of the high network efficiency. So I mean, you know, like we have to enhance this kind of, we have to have tools to enhance such efficient thought processing, efficient network processing. So I mean, in our laboratory, we do a lot of studies using EEG, the electroencephalogram, and analyze various these EEG wave patterns to look at the mental experiences. And we have observed that in advanced meditators, there is increased mental flexibility and stability, increased focus and stability associated with the proficient meditation practice, and that has been demonstrated by scientific studies. And we have also observed during meditation and during rest period, even in meditators, we see a high meta-awareness and mental equanimity. And also during meditation, we have observed enhanced theta. This is this is an outcome of wholesome experience, high meta-awareness, and non-duality. So we have now tools to assess the neuroscientific correlation of these mental experiences. For example, in this Isha meditators, we have seen that, yeah, I'll just come back to. So we have seen using these meditators, we have seen that achieving non-duality, achieving de-reification. And there is a beautiful study on content-free awareness, the neural correlates of content-free awareness. So experience meditation leads to no awareness of any mental content or sensory event, no experience of self, time, or space, and experience of selfless and objectless awareness. And this is accompanied by increased theta power, reduced alpha power, increased functional connectivity and CE, and increased functional connectivity of CE and reduced DMN activity. We have also studied mental experience in terms of de-identification as well as non-duality, studying the autocorrelation measures. Autocorrelation measure the brain intrinsic neural time scales. So here what it does is that it segregates various stimuli as well as integrate information. And we have seen that reduced autocorrelation window means segregation of breath. It is the fast segregation of the breath from distracting stimuli like thought. And thus that is an example, or it is a signature of de-identification. And this is supported also by greater depth of meditation and duality, what we have measured using meditation depth questionnaire. So we have seen both the neuroscientific studies as well as using psychological studies. We have seen that deeper meditation it is possible to achieve these mental states like the identification as well as non-duality. And yeah, so these are all the same thing. So you can see that, so we have created a phenomenological matrix model using various dimensions like meta-awareness, object orientation, verification. And what we have observed is that these experienced meditators have enhanced meta-awareness in terms of greater theta power and meditation depth scores, and also higher de-reifications, that is high non-duality scores during breath watching, and also higher clarity of mind. We have also used these mental experience as another dimension, secondary dimension, and we have observed that the scope of attention is increased, clarity became high, the stability and focus became high, and the mind wandering is, it is not mind wandering actually, it is mind wandering became very effortful. That means mind wandering is totally reduced and awareness became very high. So there are other, so in addition to meditation studies also, there are various scientific approaches for thought management, like we have cognitive behavioral therapy, repetitive RTMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation, and neurofeedback mechanism. And these definitely help to restructure the maladaptive thought patterns and enhance the cognitive control and emotion control by strengthening the prefrontal cortical activity, as well as develop greater awareness on one's own mental processes. So we have various mechanisms now to intervene the thought processes and help him. Using thought as a tool, we can establish social well-being. So like through enhancing attention, de-identification, and thus the individual wellness can be transformed to social well-being. So with the vast cognitive capabilities, definitely it is possible to manifest many dimensions of human capabilities and human qualities and virtues. And that is this journey of self-transformation towards selfhood definitely help having a better humane world. So I'll end up my thought with this philosophy of Ubuntuism. Definitely such philosophy we should be able to implement in our society for a better society. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for shedding light. So we come to our next expert, who is Dr. Kimberly Davis, an osteopath from the US. Dr. Davis, the floor is yours. You have 10 minutes.
Today and speak about thought and how it manifests in my practice. One moment. As I contemplated starting to speak with you, the question, what is thought? For me, thought is a vibrational energy with intention and focus. Thought is power, and this power is the framework of creation. It is the essence of creation. The space between vibration, intention, and movement is light. And this still point of light is a place of transformation and of healing. So when we take a thought and it's based upon a principle that is true, it is a power for positive enhancement. All things are created first spiritually, and that matrix of creating spiritually is thought. It is the intention in motion. So prior to our physical existence, we start with a basic subtle body, causal body of spirit. I talk about these things because as we work with patients and as an osteopath, we are learned to palpate. As we palpate, we first start on a piece of paper trying to feel hairs underneath the paper to see how gentle we can get our quality of touch on the body. And as we start to develop our sensitivity, we're then taught how to use our intention to put our hands on a body and go deeper into tissues where you can feel skin and lymph and bone and muscle and nerves. So using a thought as a vector of healing and focus. As we work with this power, you can feel places of fullness, places of restriction, and by using thought, by using focus, can help people come into places of coherence and balance. One of the greatest principles for me of being a human being is the principle of agency, that we have a choice of how we use thought. And as we use this thought, we can align ourselves with truth or total consciousness. And the fact we can be taught to align into this highest power brings us into these levels of coherence. This principle is also well studied in clinical basis through studying the effect of gratitude, teaching patients how to use gratitude to enhance their coherence and bring them into peace. And as you do that, you can study and find the heartbeat, the EEG will balance, breathing and respirations will come into a state of unity. This state of coherence is also a state in which when one patient holds that or one person holds that, it spreads to a community. So this state of coherence is a power and a manifestation of thought in action. Ultimately, I believe that true education to people teaching how to use your power of thought and using that as a vector for force of healing is, in fact, the essence of how we work to help spread truth, to help spread healing. This matrix is the way that I work with most of my patients in helping them find and to enhance the principles that they find that are true. Another principle that has been studying significantly in clinical medicine is the power of prayer. We have found that people don't need to know who they are, know what situations are going on. Simply using positive vector of thought with intention for healing has it shortened illness and helped people heal quicker. So these are simple explanations and simple examples that have been studied in double-blind studies through allopathic medicine to show that we can, in fact, improve the quality of our lives, the quality of others, and that we are enmeshed together in a full form of consciousness, that this is a gift that exists, it's particles of intelligence and divine in our souls. So as I work with patients and as I help teach patients how to help their process and their healing, it's simply to connect to their heart, to their mind, and to their body, with mine in my highest good, or with ours to our highest good, to create health and healing. I believe this is the power that we can use our consciousness, our education, and to change slowly, one person at a time, to create places of stillness, places of light, places of total creation that allow healing, allow miracles, and allow consciousness, as well as change not only in our bodies, but in our social structures and in our world. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your profound experiences and for your reflections. So I would like to open the floor for members of parliament to ask questions. Please raise your hands. There's one from Ricardo. Please, Ricardo. I don't remember Ricardo Jimenez.
Excuse me one moment. Do you hear me well?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So I may say that now Dr. Davis, she has been talking about how prayer is having an important role in healing sickness. So, but previously, the previous doctor, she was explaining about how the brain was working, and what is the proper connection? So we know from your experience that the prayer is helping to heal, but from the scientist's point of view, what is the logical process? Is because the thoughts are out of us or are locally inside us? Or can you explain something about that, please?
I will do my best. As we go into a state of prayer, we choose to put our consciousness into an action to align to a higher truth. And this places and helps the divergence, as we learned in our previous presentation, that causes a stagnation in thought and separation in the coordination of the organs in our body. So as we come into a place of gratitude or prayer, we actually can bring our hormones, our brain waves, our heart, and our breathing into a state of unity. As this happens, this stops the stagnation and disconnection in the brain, which our previous professor surely can address more fully in the different neuroscience aspects. But as that comes into coherency, or as it comes into unity, then we come into a place of more connectedness, more clarity, less brain fog, more energy, hence a place of regeneration. And this is when we are using thought that is based upon truth, or thought that is based upon good intent. Then that energetic principle spreads coherency. It allows us one body to match another body, which then can help allow a state of healing because it decreases stress and decreases stagnation in the body.
Thank you very much for your profound
Thank you very
answer.
much.
Thank you. So we have one more question for Honorable Member Guido-Henri de Couvreur.
I don't know if it is exactly a question, maybe yes, but when I hear you speaking, Ms. Davis, about we have the choice to use thoughts, then as a philosopher, I have some problems. Because 700 million people today have no food or almost no food. 2 billion are living in poverty. And what you tell, I can agree. I was in the business myself. It can be that for a selected group of lucky few, that is the case. That depends on the level of evolution. But how can we say that it is a general thing that thought can be thought of in the way that everybody could use the free choice for thoughts? That supposes also a free will. I hear the bell ringing, so
We have time for the answer, of course. Yeah.
One, I believe that when we talk about suffering and pain and Maslow's principles of needing security, I agree with you. When the world is stuck in famine and fever and trauma, coming to a place of peace in thought, it is very difficult. It is an active work to choose. And I feel that we do have the ability as human beings to have the principle of choice. Philosophically, though, I can't wait to hear your understanding more deeply. But I do believe by being able to choose the way we react, it can help. But in the presence of trauma and constant pain, that is constantly wearing down our physical body and our spiritual body. Hence, the ability for us to join to alleviate pain in a world is a social responsibility.
Thank you very much, Kimberly. Thank you. So we come to our next expert, is our own Minister of Science and Technology, Honorable Mr. Christophe Dumas. Christophe, you have 10 minutes also.
Okay, so thank you. So I will try to make it short. So first I want to say that I mostly agree with all what was said. And I will try to put the theory outlook on what has been said. So first, I wanted to just very quickly explain about the theory and what Swami said. So actually from the organism up to the molecule, this is the gross body. And from the atoms up to quantum of energy, it is a subtle body. And after the S-infinity particle, which is the rippling field, and the three matter and the I particle itself is the causal body. So if we look much more deeper, actually, what Swami is explaining, that the black matter is individual mind. Mind means emotions here. And the red matter is intelligence, and the white matter is the ego, as Anoop Kumar already said. And everything is on the quantum level, and the basic unit of that is the I particle, the quanta of energy. And this is why the quanta of energies, the I particle, is the thought itself. So first, we need to understand what is life, because when we are talking about human being, we are talking about life. So what is life, and what makes the difference between a living being and a non-living being? So the difference is the prana. The prana it is the life energy, and prana is thought, emotion, ego, ignorance, and consciousness, which is a non-vibrating part.
Just a second, Christophe. Do you have a presentation? So we just see you.
Yes.
We don't see a presentation.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
So share your screen.
Sorry, I didn't share my screen. Sorry.
And that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Can you see that? So,
yeah, perfect.
Okay. So this is the life energy of prana. And as Swami is explaining, the prana, actually, it is a jivatma, or the individual soul. And this is a very important thing after when I want to explain some other points. So as Swamiji explaining that the thought actually is coming from the I particle, which is the red, white, and black matter. The red matter is the gravitational field. So when it is also the intellect. So when the gravitational field change, actually, it creates the white and the black matter. So it depends on if the frequencies are going lower or higher. So when it is going lower, it is electrical field or information. And when it is going higher, it is emotion or magnetic field. So why we are saying that actually the I particle is the basic unit of thought, because as neuroscientists say, if we want to assess thought, there is one way, which is EEG, and in EEG we are measuring the electrical field. But there is also another point, which is the MRI, the magnetic resonance imaging. So here we can see that actually the thought has two ends, as Swamiji is explaining. One is electrical and second is magnetic. But the point is that some organisms, just like jellyfish, has no brain. So how does it work? And we have to go just deeper from that. And if we are going much more deeper than that, there is one unicellular organism. So if we put this unicellular organism actually in a labyrinth and the food is inside, it's developing everywhere. But if we stop the food and just put the food at the entry and the exit of the labyrinth, actually this organism solves the shortest path. So it means that in one way, it is also one kind of thought and one kind of emotion, because this organism is struggling for surviving, for finding food. This is the primary emotion, and so it's processing the labyrinth, because he has mapped this and shared this information. So I wanted to now introduce the concept of biophoton, because as I said, thought is electromagnetic, and electromagnetic is light or photon. And in human being, there is one point which is called biophoton, and this biophoton is the ultra-weak light which is emitted by the DNA in living cells. So these biophotons are emitted when there is some process inside the DNA, and what has been shown is that the biophoton actually is involved in cells communication, from cells to cells. So it is also a media of information, a media of emotion. So this is, for example, one picture of the light emitted by the DNA of one algae. And this is also one other point, which is cancer tumor in a mouse. So we can see that when the stress is increasing, the light, the quantity of light is increasing because the cell is overstressed, and there is much more process inside. So I wanted to share now a very important slide. And so we want to define what is the difference between human intelligence and other intelligence. So there is one study which has been conducted in 2016 showing the biophoton inside the brain for different animals and also for the human being. So there is the bullfrog, the mouse, the chicken, the pig, the monkey, and the human. And you can see that actually there is one minimum wavelength of the biophoton which is emitted. This is the average, and this is the maximum. So actually, what we can say is when the frequency is increasing, the black matter is increasing, the emotion is increasing, and this is the negative energy. So when we are stressed, actually the wavelength of the biophoton is reducing. This is the one quality of thought. When we have positive thought, the wavelength is increasing. So it means that the frequency is decreasing. So this is the positive energy. This is the positive thought. And you can see that actually what makes the difference between human beings and the other animals is that this positive thought can be increased in a very significant way. So this is why human beings can think just like animal when they are stressed, when they are struggling for searching food, or when they are in fear or something like that, or they can think rationally with positive thought. And as it has been said also by Henri de Cover, yes, sometimes we can act with negative thoughts, and it is really difficult to overcome that. But we have the potential for doing that. This is also a very important point. And the last point I wanted to share is about what will happen when we are mixing human being and AA, because AA is also one form of intelligence. So there is several experiences. So one experience is about some scientists create one experience with brain cells putting on electrodes, and when the electrodes are sending some electrical signal, so it's going to the brain cells, and the brain cells are developing the neurons connection, and they can train voice recognition. So actually, this is really scary because you can see that after 2 days of training, the neurons system and the neurons themselves are developing. The point is that, as we said, what kind of prana is coming inside, because the first antenna of the thought in the gross body is the DNA, and after that it has been coordinated by the brain. And so when we are mixing that, actually we are taking non-living information, non-living prana, so it is, and we are putting inside that. So it is one part of the jiva, atma, is coming inside non-living things. The other point is that we can do the opposite. So we can put some in different implants. So we can put some stimuli inside the brain. And also it is very dangerous. For example, it has been reported that 10% of the patients who have received deep implant brain are suffering about trouble of the behavior. They become more aggressive. They say that they can feel that it is not themselves thinking. And also it is very dangerous because we don't know about the long term, because we are putting non-living things into human body. So thank you very much for your attention. And if you have some question, I will be very happy.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dumas, for your highly interesting insights. So, members of Parliament, the floor is yours. If you may ask any questions, please raise your hand. So if there's no question, I would like to ask one myself. We are more and more training artificial intelligence and comparing our way or ability of thoughts with the artificial intelligence. Do you have an idea that this is a way back also, that our way of thoughts can be trained superficially by artificial intelligence?
Yes, actually, I think that when you are using artificial intelligence don't have emotion at all. So we don't know exactly what is beside that, because a human being is a balanced state between thought and emotion, So if we are using too much thought and not emotion, it will become unbalanced. And slowly, the human being will lose his ability to perceive emotion. And slowly, we will become just like machine.
Yeah, thank you for this answer. There's one question from Guido Henri, Couvreur.
Yeah, I try to get, okay, the sound is on. Christophe, if I listen to your explanation, maybe there can come a new kind of being that is a mix between technology and today's human being. Is that possible then?
Yes, of course. Definitely. For example, now they are training soldiers, which are mixed human being and machine, because they can control themselves, and they have no emotion, no fear, so they can fight much more efficiently. Yes, of course. But the point is, everything which is coming into our body, we are creating karma, and when we leave the body, all the thought and emotion are staying, and after when we will take another body, we will have this reduced potential of human being, because we already have a machine inside us, not only for this life, but also for the future life.
And are you saying now that it is already existing? Because I didn't get that.
Yes, of course, it's already they are already training that.
Wow, some ethical problem is arising here.
Yes, of course, it is really dangerous. Yes. So this is why I think we want to pass a bill for that. Yes, of course.
Wow.
They're doing it in both ways. They are putting brains into machines, and they're putting electrical things into brains.
Yeah.
So they're doing both ways.
Yes.
Does that mean that a human being can be programmed without having any ethical thoughts then anymore?
Yes, of course. I think that ethical thoughts should become from the earth and the logic also. And the best training is education. It is not for programming from outside, because the change is always coming from inside. It's not coming from outside.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that I can see, yes. Education is most important then, yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you very much. So we heard many new things and could perceive kind of a new world of thinking, thinking about thoughts. So thank all these presenters for their insights, for their profound experiences that they shared with us. In the first presentation, we heard about identity. So I'd like to share just one thought. When I have patients who are severely ill or they are told to be untreatable, we change the identity. So they are trained to give up their identity of being a patient towards taking on the identity of being a happy person. So we come to happiness as the major power of healing. And by this way, even severely ill people can be healed or can heal themselves because they just give up. They learned an identity of being a patient or being patient. So I thank all the experts for their thoughtful and illuminating contributions. This session has really highlighted the multifaceted nature of thought and of bridging philosophy and neuroscience and, of course, lived experience.